is Lisa, and with Valentine's Day approaching, I have a very special challenge for you today. I'm going to be doing a page with a love theme, and I'd like you to consider doing a love theme page as well. The challenge I have for you is to tell a love story, but not necessarily your love story. That is, not your story with your significant other. That's great for pages, but this time I'd like for you to think about somebody else you know, or a different relationship. Maybe your relationship with a child or a sibling, or a pet, or any kind of wonderful relationship that you have, or you can do as I'm doing. I'm choosing to tell someone else's love story, and this is my aunt and her husband. They were when this photograph was taken, it was their 70th wedding anniversary. They actually made it to 72, and then they died within 6 months of each other last year. So I got to spend a lot of time with my aunt during my life, and in the last few years I took her to a lot of doctor's appointments, some of them quite a ways off. So on the drives I heard a lot about her life, and I'd like to capture some of those memories on this page and to celebrate them. And I've had this photo a while, so I think it's a wonderful time to do that. I'd also like you to consider using maybe either non-Valentine's Day products or colors that we don't typically think of for Valentine's Day. Maybe not the red and pink kind of glittery stuff, but something else that still speaks to the love story. I do have a die cut here with hearts, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. For this couple, the Authentique Nestled collection is just perfect, because this is a fall collection from Authentique, but it's not only the colors that go with the photo and what they were wearing, it's also things like there's a photograph or a piece of paper here that has seeds things in there, and my aunt gardened, and she loved being outdoors and gardening and things. And there's a little animal paper, and just really the wood kind of looks, these are just really wonderful for them and for their life. And there's a paper with hearts, so they're hearts, but they're not the traditional colors that we think of for Valentine's Day. So I'm going to use these 6x6 papers on this layout. Now the die cut I created this, and it'll be available to you over on my blog. There'll be a link in the video description for this video. They'll kind of lead you through how you get to this. It'll be an SVG format, and there'll be this cut as well as the hearts that fill in, all the hearts basically the same, to go on the inside of the design. And I've cut this sample out, and I cut it out of some kind of cheap cardstock here just to test it, so it tore a little bit, but it's basically, just a circle of hearts. And what I'm going to do is use my 6x6 pad and cut out a heart out of each different paper and fill in. What I haven't decided for this page is whether I want to cut the hearts out of the craft cardstock and put it on the dark background, or I want to cut out of the dark cardstock. This is Early Espresso from Stampin' Up!, and then put that on the craft background. I think I'm going to test it with the craft because I have more sheets of this, and this is my very last page of the Early Espresso in 12x12. So to do this challenge, you don't have to do the die cut. That's just entirely up to you, but just consider telling a love story that's not your story with your significant other, another relationship, or some other a couple that you are that you know, and you'd like to share their story in your album. And also consider maybe some non-Valentine's themed product. So to get myself going on my page, I need to pull some papers. As I go through the video, I want to share with you a little bit about their love story. My aunt and uncle were married in February of 1942, just a few weeks after Pearl Harbor, and just a couple of weeks before he was deployed. At one point, she went to live near him in California, which I'm sure was a big deal for a girl who had probably never left North Carolina before that, and she was, I think, maybe 18 years old or something, so that was really a lot. Now, what I've done here is I've cut out my die cut out of the craft paper, and I cut most of my hearts, but I want some of them to be very specific patterns. So I'm just tracing around some of the cutouts and going ahead and cutting these, and they're going to fit back behind the hearts. You'll see when I start to glue them on that some of them I had to do a little extra trimming and things with. I have worked on that since I originally created this design, so when you cut it, it should come out a little bit better. The big heart cut came out fine. It was just the fill-in hearts maybe weren't the perfect size, so I've worked on that a little bit. So if you download that from my site, you'll find that I think that it works a little bit better. And it is an SVG cut, so you can use it on any type of cutter that will do SVG. I have the Sure Cuts a Lot software, and that's what I use with my silhouette. All right, so I'm figuring out the placement for all of these. Now, once my aunt and uncle, once the war was over, they started a dairy farm, and they lived right near me. The dairy part of it was gone by the time I moved in over here, but I remember from growing up that my aunt went to milk early in the morning and late in the evening, and my uncle was a brick mason during the day, and then he helped her in mornings and evenings, and they worked really hard. And in addition to farming, she had 2 children to raise, and she was very active in her church. That was one of the times that we spent together, was going on Saturdays to do all the altar cloths every Saturday and get everything ready for Sunday services. So and she loved to garden. The seed paper, that paper that had it's like seed catalogs, she loved seed catalogs. And those were like magazines to her almost. She would go through them in the wintertime and plan what she was going to do. They were just wonderful people, and everybody always enjoyed visiting them. And she taught Sunday school for, 40, 50 years. I don't know how long, a long, long time. In fact, at the funeral, the minister had all of us who had had her in Sunday school stand up. And it was a really large number of people in attendance at the funeral who she had witnessed to in her life, and that she was I'm sure she was very proud of that, although she didn't make a lot of it, but it was certainly something she was known for. So I got to witness their lives and their marriage over the years, and I was always inspired by how devoted they were to everything that they did. Now here's where I'm having to trim a little bit off of some of the hearts. Alright, I got everything glued down, and I am adding just a little extra touch of glue to the outsides of these to get them, because I put the hearts in. At this point I'm just adding the glue around the outside edges, and I end up putting just a touch on the insides. And what I'm starting to notice is that I got a little glue around the edges there, and that really shows up on dark cardstock. You have to be careful with your glue, as it really shows. But I do have a way to deal with that, and I do this not just to cover up my glue, but also because I felt like this needed a little something more, and maybe it's because this dark brown cardstock is just very, very plain. So I felt like I needed to add a little something, and I used a marker to go around the edges. Now here I'm framing my photo, and I've got the early espresso marker, and what I'm doing with this is just doing a little faux stitching. I haven't done this in ages, and certainly not on a scrapbook page. I'm just going around the edges, and I don't know how well this is showing up on camera. On my little thumbnail here as I voice over, I can't see it all that well, so hopefully it's showing up a little bit better for you. But you're just doing a faux stitch all the way around the outside and inside edge with that brown, and it did make a lot of difference on the finished product. I die cut part of my title, and we're going to do A Life Together, because they spent a lot of time together in working together on the farm and in just sharing everything throughout their lives. Now that one flower was a great match, but it's awfully fancy, and it's really, I don't think it fits the papers, and I don't really think it fits them that much. So I had another flower there from Prima that I thought was a better fit, and I'm also going to add some flair and a few other embellishments to finish this off. The journaling is going to end up behind the photo. We're going to tuck that in behind the photo. And as I was looking for brads, I happened to find these little corners, that little photo corners that happen to be just the right color in that rust color, so I'm using some of those. I'm going to end up getting some trim to go in there before we're done. Now, to make my pocket, I like to use a good strong tape. And I wanted to put a fair amount of journaling, and also I wanted to put some of my private thoughts about my aunt and uncle and what I learned about them over the years. So I didn't necessarily want that to just be where anybody would see it looking through the album. I mean, it's not something that I would have to hide from everybody if somebody pulled it out and read it, but I just didn't want to make it a prominent part. I really wanted to focus on the photo and make this a really attractive page. I'm looking for some blue trim. And I find something, and then you'll see in the end I've found the perfect trim to use as part of the journaling block. Okay, I typed up the journaling, and I have slid it behind the photo, and to be sure it's easy to pull out, I've attached a little piece of ribbon and another brad up here at the top. It's a little bit different style of brad, so that's easy to pull out, and it's printed on both sides. And I put a sticker down here where I'll put my aunt and uncle's name and the date of the photo. So let's take a close-up look. If you're interested in participating in the challenge to do a love story about somebody else or another relationship besides yours and your spouse or your significant other, and to perhaps use some non-traditional product on your page, stay tuned for some more details at the end of the video. Thanks for watching.